us again tonight on another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I am your host for this fabulous little half hour where we are going to talk all things motorsports because, boy, did we have a lot to get to. There's a lot coming up here on the slate. You won't want to miss a single moment of it because we're going to get you caught up on all the news and notes you might have missed from this past week. And we're also going to talk about some of the crazy things that happened this past weekend in motorsports. We had Connor Zilic winning another Xfinity Series race. We had McLaren F1 doing a very strange team orders in the Italian Grand Prix. And then also we have, it's getting down to crunch time for the NASCAR playoffs. We'll talk about who's in and who might be out after this weekend's race at Bristol. So before we get into all of that, make sure you, if you like this show, to follow me on social media. You can do so by looking up rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33. And then make sure you have that handy dandy little WTHR Plus app installed on your smart TV so that you can get brand new episodes of The Racing Report as soon as they are released. They come out every single week, and you won't want to miss a single episode because there's a lot going on in the world of racing. And for those of you gearheads that are out there like me, you want to know all about it. So let's go ahead and get you caught up, especially right now, starting with the Formula One news. Cadillac F1 CEO Dan Tauris says that Colton Herta is not guaranteed to get an F1 seat, and that the prospect of him running a season in Formula 2 is less about adapting him to tracks and more about helping him adapt to the Pirelli tires. Tauris said that Herta's ability to learn and adapt to these European-style tracks is better than his knowledge of the Pirelli tires, which would make sense. Herta is somebody who can learn tracks a lot quicker, but he's going to be on completely different tires. Firestone are very different compared to Pirelli, so he's got to get some knowledge there. Also, in Formula 2, you do typically run two different compounds, typically in the feature race, which means there's at least one pit stop that Herta would benefit from having to make. Especially, he would benefit from having to manage some of his tires, his soft tires onto the mediums, or even hards, or however, mediums onto hards, however the strategy is for that day, and getting him used to making those Formula One style pit stops. I think all of that can be good. But again, something to keep in mind is we don't have confirmation that quite yet, other than what Dan Tauris has said. Dan Tauris who is, again, the CEO of the Cadillac F1 team, Andretti Global, has a hand in Spire Motorsports all over the place. He's basically the head honcho now at Andretti Global. He's basically has alluded to it and has seemingly confirmed that Herta is indeed going to race Formula 2 next year. But again, that has not yet been formally confirmed outside of what Tauris has said. And I'm expecting possibly within the next couple of weeks, maybe in the next couple of months, closer and closer to when the Formula 1 and, as a result, Formula 2 seasons start to wrap up and conclude. It would not surprise me that we start learning where Herta might go and what junior Formula team he is going to race for next year. And remember, I believe that there was some rumor that maybe Prema might be on the table for one of their two cars next year. But again, that is yet to be confirmed. As of right now, that is all speculative and is all rumor, so take it with a grain of salt. Meanwhile, let's move on into the next piece of Formula One news today. Red Bull has reportedly ruled out any further driver changes for the rest of the 2025 season, especially this coming after Yuki Tsunoda seemingly is struggling, and Isaac Hadjar did get his first podium a couple of weeks ago in the Netherlands. Again, Hadjar was in the points again this past weekend at the Italian Grand Prix, but, you know, Tsunoda and Liam Lawson had a bit of some contact, very heated words there between those two drivers. I think Yuki has more to lose there than Lawson does, because I think if Yuki is kicked out of Red Bull, I think that they'll probably just move Lawson back up. But again, that still seems to be, or at the very least, Lawson's seat is safer than Tsunoda's in theory. I mean, if, you know, Lawson could always obviously get dropped by the RB, but if Tsunoda is not working out with Red Bull, I don't think they're going to drop him back down to the RB. They're probably just going to kick him to the curb and say, hey, sorry, bud, thanks for your time. Again, a lot of that's still unsure right now, but as of right now, we do know that Red Bull has seemingly said, we're not going to make any changes before the end of the year. So something to keep in mind there. Speaking of driver news, Pierre Gasly has signed a contract extension with Alpine through the 2028 Formula One season. So some good news there for Gasly and his fans. Meanwhile, let's talk about some things that F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali has been saying over the past couple of days. Recently, Domenicali said Formula One has, quote, no more room for a 12th entry on the grid, and says that the best way for new entities to join Formula One would just be to buy a team. Okay. So 22 cars is apparently the max we'll ever have at Formula One on a Formula One grid ever again, according to Domenicali, despite the fact that 15 years ago we had 24. Anywho, moving along, Domenicali also spoke on why he initially rejected that first Andretti Global entry, basically saying that, quote, he didn't see the substance behind the project that we consider necessary. I'm quoting there from Domenicali. And then he said all of that changed when General Motors came in, which pretty much all but confirms what we knew ahead of time, which was they didn't really see any value in the Andretti name, but saw value when General Motors wanted to be a part of it with their Cadillac brand. I mean, the plan was there. They even mentioned, Domenicali even mentioned the plan was there. He said, okay, you guys clearly have a very good plan, and didn't acknowledge how good the plan was until GM came in and said, no, we're going to take this. And Michael Andretti stepped back, and Dan Towers started seeing everything. It's just stuff we already knew, but it seems to be getting confirmed here. Meanwhile, also, controversial things said by Stefano Domenicali, part 2. Domenicali also said that he thinks Formula One races are, quote-unquote, too long for young people, and cites the popularity of the race highlights videos that are being posted on YouTube. I think that's not true at all, personally. I think race highlight videos are just great to get a quick, condensed, bite-sized idea of what happened during the race in the event you can't watch the whole thing. It's not necessarily meaning that you don't want to watch the whole thing. There's nothing wrong with watching highlights. We've all watched highlights before. We used to love watching SportsCenter highlights. Everybody still wishes that SportsCenter was more about highlights and less about talking heads like me. But despite that, I'm not saying I'm an ESPN, but I am a talking head. I'm talking to you, in the screen. That's why I say that. But no, it's very interesting to see Domenicali say this, especially on the heels of NASCAR for years saying that we think that maybe our races are a little bit too long, but fans traditionally pushing back and saying, no, we don't want shorter races. We like the races the length that they are. It should be an endurance race. And Formula One, really, those races are not usually any longer than an hour and a half. So to sit here and say that's too long, I mean, that's no longer than a movie. If you think about it, that's probably about as long as the F1 movie. I'm surprised Domenicali's saying this, but also I'm not, considering the fact that this seems to be the way of thinking for most motorsports CEOs lately, but I won't get into that because we do have to move on. Daniel Ricciardo has said his racing days are behind him, seemingly confirming his retirement from driving. I personally don't think that Ricciardo will ever come back to a race car, especially since I know he's had offers from NASCAR, from IndyCar, from Supercars to go do races, even sports cars as well. If he's not taking any of those, that makes me think he's content with the way his career is now and probably has no reason to go out and do anything else. But the final piece of Formula One news that we should talk about today is that Monaco and Formula One have reached an agreement to keep the Grand Prix, the Monaco Grand Prix, on the calendar until at least 2035. So those of you who are like me and don't care how bad the race is and really are only care about the fact that it is a crown jewel of motorsports. It is part of the crown jewel of motorsports. You go Le Mans, Monaco, Indianapolis 500, not necessarily in that order. I think that it's a race that should stay on the circuit. And again, as I've said multiple times, not just on this show, but also on my personal podcast, which you can listen to by looking up Rob and Roller, Racing with Rob and Roller podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. I've said for years, I think that Monaco should stay on the calendar, and it's not a Formula One problem. It's not as much of a Formula One problem as I think we make it out to be. I think the fact of the matter is the cars are just too wide. We've seen what a race like Formula E and even Formula 2, Formula 3, Formula Regional, smaller cars can put on at Monaco. They can put on good races. And I think that if Formula One maybe just made their cars a lot smaller than the big hulking beasts that they are now, I think we could have a lot better racing at Monaco. But until that happens, I don't think it's going to be groundbreaking. But anyway, it is on the schedule to stay for at least the next 10 years. That's important to note. Now let's move on into the world of IndyCar, because there is some big IndyCar news to talk about here real quick before we take our first break of the show. Nathan Brown of the Indianapolis Star reports that NTD Data could opt out of its final 2 years as a sponsor to Arrow McLaren. This reportedly comes as a result of the fallout from Alex Palou's lawsuit, in which that initial 6-year deal, which was signed in late 2022, was supposed to include sponsorship of Palou. So basically, to sum this up, NTT Data signed this deal with Arrow McLaren under the assumption that it was going to sponsor Alex Palou. Now remember, NTT Data was a Chip Ganassi sponsor for many years and had been basically since 2013, and then they signed this deal late after the 2022 season with Arrow McLaren. And again, what happened around that time? Well, that Alex Palou, is he not? Where is he going to race next year? Well, now we found out he was going to race with Ganassi, and he's sticking to Ganassi. And Chip says that's water under the bridge. We're past it, and this is how it is. But it looks like the effects of it could cost Arrow McLaren sponsorship of their number 6 cars. So definitely something to look into that. NTT apparently had an option to end the 6-year deal after 4 years, which apparently came after this couple weeks race ago at Nashville. So just something to keep in mind there, looking at where does NTT Data go. Obviously, they are still the title sponsor of the series. They are signed with that through 2027. But right now, as far as what if they're going to be on an IndyCar next year, that still remains to be seen. Now, final piece of IndyCar news here before we take our first break. Robert Schwartzman took to social media on Wednesday to dispel rumors that he was unhappy in IndyCar. Now, these rumors reportedly came from a Racer article published August 29th, in which Marshall Pruitt seemed to hint that Robert Schwartzman was, quote, I'm quoting from the article. I went back and pulled this article and looked at it. You can, as far as I know, it's still up on Racer. At least as of the recording of this episode, it's still up on Racer. I don't think they've issued a retraction yet. I don't think they will. But in that article, it was said, quote, that Schwartzman was, quote, miserable with the American racing experience and pining for a return to Europe. Now, Schwartzman responded, like I said, on social media, but taking to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and saying that he has never even thought about disliking racing in the United States, and says he's actually very happy to be racing in IndyCar, praising the series' competition, atmosphere, and the circuit variety that is prevalent in the series. He also added that, quote, the fans are passionate and the paddock is very welcoming. So some positive words there from Robert Schwartzman, dispelling some rumors that said he might not be super happy in IndyCar. Now, let's go ahead and take a break, because when we come back, we've got IMSA news to talk about, some NASCAR news to talk about, and some Supercars silly season news to talk about. So you won't want to miss a single bit of that. If you love touring cars and stock cars and sports cars, if you like all of that, that's coming up right next. So don't go anywhere. You are watching The Racing Report. And welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. I'm so glad you've stuck around. Let's talk about the news in the world of IMSA as we're getting ready here in a couple of weeks' time for the WeatherTech Battle on the Bricks at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. IMSA has revealed the 53-car field for the upcoming 6-hour endurance race. The number 4. Here are some of the important keys of this entry list. The number 5 Proton Competition Porsche 936 is not on the entry list in GT after suffering damage at the 6 Hours of the Glen. Again, they did not run at Road America and now will not race at Indianapolis. Meanwhile, Logan Sargent, former Formula One driver, is returning to motorsports and will make his LMP2 debut in that class with PR1 Matthias in motorsports. Supercars point leader Brock Feeney will make his IMSA debut driving the number 75 Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo in the GTD Pro class alongside Kenny Habul. And then unfortunately, some news to report there. The Iron Dames number 83 in the GTD category will not be racing at Indianapolis after it was also scratched from Watkins Glen. Again, they had a serious car issue there, and it has prevented the car from racing the last couple of rounds. So some important news there. Now let's talk about, as we did just mention, the Supercars point leader Brock Feeney going to race some IMSA news. Let's talk about drivers that are not Brock Feeney in the world of Supercars. The Supercars silly season is indeed heating up, with Speed Cafe now reporting that Prema Air is set to replace James Golding and Richie Stanaway with Jaden Ojeda and Declan Fraser, two long sought after, I guess, not really sought after, but pretty good drivers in the Super 2 category, which is basically like their Xfinity Series, Indy Next, kind of their feeder series into the big supercars. They've run Supercars races as wild cards in Enduros before, but I think this is their first, both drivers getting their first opportunity to really run a full-time Supercars stint there, so good news for them. But meanwhile, Matt Stone Racing is expected to welcome back Jack LeBrock after 2 years with Erebus, but his teammate is currently unknown at the time. So we'll have to keep some eyes on that as we go forward and see what's going on in the world of supercars when it comes to the silly season. Now, let's go ahead and move on into the NASCAR world, because we've got some stuff to talk about here, lots of stuff to break down. The Haas factory team is set to switch to Chevrolet next year in both its Cup and Xfinity Series programs, so that's big news there. Obviously, sticking with 2 Xfinity cars and 1 Cup Series car, but that was a big change that was announced, not really unexpected. I think this was rumored for a couple of weeks now, but now it's official. It's been made official that they will run Chevrolets beginning in 2026. Meanwhile, Sammy Smith, on the heels of his playoff berth in the Xfinity Series, will return to Junior Motorsports in 2026 to drive the number 8 Chevrolet. Also in some Xfinity Series news, Brendan Butterbean Queen is going to make his Xfinity Series debut with Colleague Racing this weekend at Bristol. Great news for him. I'm looking forward to that. He has done a great job in the ARCA Series so far this year. I think he's even leading the points still. Has had one heck of a season. If you haven't watched him in the Cars Late Model Tour, highly recommend checking him out at the very least when ARCA goes to Bristol this weekend. Butterbean is definitely a name you're going to be hearing a lot. And when he wins, he likes to go to Waffle House. So if you're at a Waffle House anywhere near a racetrack that Butterbean McQueen wins, you better be ready. He's bringing his whole posse in for a nice big old dinner at probably around midnight or 1 o'clock or whenever. So if you're a Waffle House worker watching this right now, be ready. Be ready, because anywhere Brendan Queen wins, you better be watching out. He loves to take his posse down there to Waffle House. And now let's talk about something in the playoffs, NASCAR playoffs related, as the round of 16 cutoff looms. And it'll be the round of 16 will be the bottom 4 will be eliminated, and the round of 12 will be decided after this weekend's race at Bristol. Hendrick Motorsports has decided they are going to swap pit crew members between Alex Bowman and Carson Hocevar of Spire Motorsports. Remember, Spire has a Hendrick affiliation. Bowman sits 35 points below the cut line, but 10 above Josh Berry, who's in 16th place. So definitely Hendrick kind of throwing anything at the wall that'll stick to try and help out Alex Bowman. He's had a rough start to the playoffs, just like Josh Berry. Both of those guys seemingly have not been able to catch a break in these first 2 races. Obviously, with Josh Berry spinning out, not just at Darlington, but then doing it again at Gateway, both early in the race, ironically. You know, I don't know about Josh Berry's future, but Alex Bowman, at the very least, they are trying everything. Meanwhile, we should also talk about the playoff cut line there. Austin Dillon and Shane Van Gisbergen are 11 and 15 points below the cut line, respectively. Whereas, like I said, Bowman is 35 points. So this could be a very dramatic Bristol, as if Bristol isn't normally dramatic. We could be in for a show coming up this Saturday night. So, with that said, we're going to go ahead and take our second and final break of the show. And when we come back, we're going to recap last weekend's races, talk about all of the big news and notes regarding that. And then we're also going to get you caught up on all the races that are coming up this weekend, because there's going to be a lot and you won't want to miss a single one. So don't go anywhere. You are watching The Racing Report. And welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Let's get you caught up on all the races that happened over the course of this past weekend. Connor Zilic won his 4th straight Xfinity Series race this past weekend at Gateway. He's got a 15 59-point buffer in the playoff standings as it stands. Him and Justin Allgaier, I think Allgaier's got like a 30 or so, 39, almost 40-point buffer as well. Easily the top two drivers in the playoffs this year. But hey, big shout out to Harrison Burton making it in. Got in over his cousin Jeb, who crashed unfortunately during that race, ending any opportunity he had at potentially making the playoffs. But the playoff field is set in the NASCAR Xfinity Series right now. And we're going to take a look at that as of right now and take a quick look at the Xfinity Series playoffs, because it is a not super tight at the top of the field, but further down it's going to be a bloodbath to try and get in and make it into the round of 8. Carson Kvapil, Sheldon Creed, Harrison Burton, and Austin Hill are all separated by 5 points. Austin Hill obviously being the lowest because he had all of his playoff points stripped from him after his suspension following that incident with Eric Almirola at Indianapolis. So he is actually at the very bottom, but he's only 5 points below the cut line. So it's very, very tight in the Xfinity Series points battle as they go into their playoff opener this weekend at Bristol. And I'm curious to see what drivers are going to be aggressive and what drivers are going to be conservative when it comes to racing at this world's fastest half mile. Well, maybe that's still Salem Speedway. But anyway, one of the most exciting half miles, I should say, which is Bristol. Now, let's talk about real quick here. Let's move on after the Xfinity Series race at Gateway. We had the Cup Series race, which also happened. Denny Hamlin getting the victory there. A great race for some, I think. It was an interesting race during the first half, but again, this NASCAR next-gen car continues to suffer from a dirty air problem where it's hard to pass. It is just hard to pass. It doesn't matter what kind of tires you have on, how much fuel you have, what strategy you're on. It just seems hard to pass. And so there's a lot of people hoping this weekend's race at Bristol maybe changes up some of that. We'll talk about that here later in a bit. But Denny Hamlin going on his podcast again, even after winning the race, possibly calling his shot. Could this be the year where Denny Hamlin finally gets that first championship? He's got himself, again, locked into now the round at 12. Could happen. He's got to keep winning in order to keep advancing into that playoff round. And it could be a big deal if he does win this title because, again, keep in mind, him and his team, as well as Front Row Motorsports, are embattled in this NASCAR lawsuit. And I'm curious to see how awkward the awards banquet could get after all of that's gone on, especially since the awards banquet will happen, I believe, just a few weeks before the trial is scheduled to go to start. Be interesting there. But Hamlin coming out for blood. He's definitely ready to go forth and grab his first ever NASCAR Cup Series title. We'll see if he does that here in the next couple of weeks. Now we have to talk about the biggest thing in the world of Formula One is what in the world was McLaren doing on their last set of pit stops. Now, obviously, it's insane, first of all, that the medium tire was basically able to go the entire distance of the race to the point in which the McLarens did not have to actually stop until less than 10 laps to go in the race. And when they did that, obviously they knew Max Verstappen was going to pass them and continue to drive away with the race. And Verstappen did win, but for whatever reason, McLaren said, well, there was a slow stop for Lando. So they pitted Piastri right before Lando, about a lap before Lando. And Piastri came in, Lando jumped him, all is good. And then Lando came in, they had a problem on the left front tire. Some problem happened. They couldn't get the left front tire on, had a slow stop. And what did they do in response to that? Well, they told Piastri to give Lando the spot back and then said, once you do that, you can race him. Well, the problem was once he gave him the spot back, he was out of DRS range. He couldn't catch him. Lando had a whole lap fresher tires than Oscar. And it's very concerning. It's not concerning, but it's very bizarre. And it makes me wonder what the thought process behind that was, because typically team orders, I'm not complaining about team orders. Team orders are a thing in Formula One. They've been a thing for years and years and years. It makes up almost the foundation of the sport in some ways. Like if you grew up around the time I was watching Formula One in the 2000s, Ferrari was doing it almost every other week in order to benefit Michael Schumacher. But it was never a situation where Ferrari was basically leading Rubens Barrichello along and saying, yes, Rubens, we treat you two equally. No, it was always clear that Rubens was there to help Michael Schumacher win the championship and ergo help Ferrari win the Constructors' Championship. With this, it very much confuses me because Piastri was leading the points, and in a series where every point matters, to have the guy who's leading the points give the position back to the guy who's behind him in points seems kind of weird. And I know they say it's in the method of fairness, but Formula One inherently is not a fair sport. Motorsports is not a fair sport, and unfortunately, slow pit stops happen to everybody. And I think some people have brought up, and myself included, have brought up the very weird situation is, let's say hypothetically, this is a situation where they're level on points. They go to Abu Dhabi, and the same thing happens. Do they enact the same protocol where they say, hey, Oscar, we know that you just passed Lando, but that was because Lando had a slow stop. Would you mind giving the spot back to Lando? It'll be insane. You're opening up a complete you're opening up Pandora's box and a can of worms that you don't want to open up. And it's a very confusing decision by McLaren to make that because, again, I understand team orders, but this is a team orders that I really can't understand. It doesn't make a lick of sense to me, but they've done it. It's done. It's over with. Max Verstappen laughed when he heard about it, and I think a lot of people probably agree with that laugh. I think it is kind of a silly move to make. I know McLaren have tried to explain themselves and again trying to say that it was done in an effort of fairness, but again, motor racing is not an inherently fair sport. Some drivers are going to have good luck and some drivers are going to have bad luck. It just happens. It's how the driver responds to the bad luck that makes the race, that makes the driver, that makes that championship push all that more important. And when you're kind of artificially creating that, it's just kind of weird. And again, yes, team orders are technically artificially altering the outcome of the race. You could say that. You could argue that absolutely. But at the same time, usually it's done to benefit one specific driver, and usually that driver is leading or ahead of the other driver in the points. This was the complete opposite. So it's just a very strange situation, and I'm curious to see if the same thing happens later on down the road. Does McLaren do this again? Because if this is something that keeps happening, I have to imagine Piastri's not going to be too happy with that. Even if he is on the beneficial end to it, it's still going to be a weird feeling for him, I think. And I don't know if it was a weird feeling for Lando either, but definitely a strange way to end the Italian Grand Prix. All right, now let's go ahead and start wrapping up the show by talking about the races that are coming up this weekend. We've got a whole slate of NASCAR in Bristol, the NASCAR Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, the Cup Series. They're all going to be in Bristol this weekend. And then the ARCA National Series and the ARCA East are also going to run a combinations race coming up this weekend at Bristol. We've got also no Formula One. Obviously, IndyCar season is over. Formula One's going to take a break until they come back for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix coming up here in a couple of weeks. And then again, in 2 weeks' time, we've got the IMSA Battle on the Bricks at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But to keep you all, non-NASCAR centric, we do have a Supercars race coming up this weekend. It's their first Enduro of the season as they start the Endurance Cup. The Sprint Cup is done. The Endurance Cup is coming up next. And then we'll just got a couple more races before we determine who will be a champion at the Adelaide Grand Final, a race that will also include NASCAR driver and Daytona 500 winner Austin Cindric at the Adelaide Street Circuit. But Supercars are set to race a 500-kilometer race this weekend at the Bend that will take place around 12:05 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're on the Eastern Time Zone, it'll be a late one. It'll be about after midnight. After midnight, that's when the lights are going to go off for that Supercars race. Again, you can watch it either by subscribing to SuperView on YouTube, or if you have Racer Network, it should be being broadcast live there as well, albeit with commercials. Just be aware of that if you're not a fan of commercials, because sometimes people are and sometimes people aren't. So just giving you options there for how you can watch. So that is it for this week's episode of the Racing Report. Man, I'm so glad I got through all that news, all that notes, and was still able to come in right on time. So really appreciate you guys tuning in again this week. We really appreciate all the viewers that we get every weekend on the Racing Report. And again, like I said, I've always said, if you like this show, please be sure to follow me on social media and let me know if you like this show. Look up at rpeters33 33. That's RPEETERS 33 to find out more, find out some of my thoughts, and read some of my articles even. It's out there. It's an option. And then also make sure you've got that WTHR Plus app installed on your smart TV so you can get brand new episodes of the Racing Report as soon as they're released, and also get live local breaking news every single time you're in the Indianapolis area. You're going to want that because there's a lot of news going on in Indianapolis, and a lot of it too is racing related. So that's what we're here for. So for WTHR Plus, my name is Rob Peeters, and this has been another episode of the Racing Report. Thank you all so much for watching.